Okay, so we are live over here, and then we can send the live link to the Chabra, which I think will work. There we go. There we go. And then we're just going to send it to just started. There we go. And let's send it to Rebbetzin Baronholtz as well. Okay, so last week we spent a little bit of time understanding the that very first pasuk in Perek Tes, which we're going to read again. We learned the Maharal about what it meant coming together as one to fight against the oneness of the Jewish people. And the lashon of the pasuk again is Vayiskabtzu yachdav lilachem im Yehoshua im Yisrael peh echad. And the Maharal explained to us last week, the Maharal in Netzach Yisrael, in the 30th parak, that the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the opposite, the that which stands in distinction with the ribui, the multitude that is the world. And we saw Yaakov and Esav and Moshe Rabbeinu's comment, Lo mirubchem chashak Hashem achem, ki atem hama'at mikol ha'amim. The Jewish people are small by definition. We are small, and we are singular. That is the goal. Like we say, Shabbos Mincha, Ata echad v'shimcha echad, u'mi ka'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. The nature of relating all the multiplicities of different things in this world to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Hashem Echad finds fruition in Eretz Yisrael B'dafka. And that's what we have not yet explained. And Be'ez Hashem, the Ramchal is going to explain some of this to us this evening. And the Ramchal that we are going to learn is from a somewhat enigmatic kuntras. The kuntras is called Mishkani or Mishkanei Elyon, the upper Mishkan. This is from the Hakdama, the introduction to that sefer. And that is what we're going to be taking a look at today from really page number 2 of the Hakdama, where the Ramchal is going to explain to us the relationship between Eretz Yisrael, the rest of the world, and how this is the abstract concept of Eretz Yisrael. The Zohar Kodesh makes an interesting comment, which is not what the Ramchal is focusing on at this point, but to illustrate it, the Zohar Kodesh points out, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. So when I was in yeshiva, Rastav told us that there's a joke that Israeli children like to say, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz, as matai hu bara chutz la'aretz. Right? When did Hashem create chutz la'aretz? It seems to be that Hashem never did. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. So the Zohar says, yeah, Taka, that's true. Haaretz means Eretz Yisrael. That's Haaretz. Haaretz means Shamayim. There is Shamayim, and then there is Haaretz, Eretz Yisrael. Chutz la'aretz like is something else. It's outside of this miskeret of the Bria, at least at its origination stages. And we're going to talk about what exactly that means within the context of this Ramchal. Let's just see. There we go. We can make that a little bit smaller, and then make this a little bit larger. And I came to this in a shir that we gave last year about Korach's sons, because the Medrash Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer points out that Korach's sons, this is in a couple of Midrashim, but it's probably most explicit in the Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer, is that Korach's sons are they survived falling into the hole, and where are they? They are down in the depths of the world, and they were encountered by none other than Yonah ben Amitai Hanavi, right? Yonah in his subterranean journey. He spends a couple of days, 3 days under the sea, and he has a number of stops on his tour of the aquatic netherworld. one of those stops is the Evan Shasiyah, upon which Bnei Korach are singing. What are they singing? Moshe Emes v'Serasa Emes. That's they're having a whole record there. Moshe Emes v'Serasa Emes. That's what they're doing, and that's what Yonah was looking at. And at that point in time, the Doug says to Yonah, by the way, you're at the Evan Shasiyah, you should daven. And that's when Yonah says the whole of Perek Beis of Sefer Yonah, which is, I want to go back to the Beis HaMikdash. We noted, just as an aside, that the Meshech Chochmah at the end of the first parak in Parak Yudches of Parshas Achrei Mos. So the Meshech Chochmah has a long arichos on what exactly the experience of Migdash was. The Meshech Chochmah notes that nowhere in all of Tanakh does the Tanakh describe the experience of Yom Kippur in the Beis HaMikdash, in Yerushalayim at all. That is only from Bayesheni and the Mishnah. Nowhere in Tanakh does the Torah describe the experience of Yom Kippur. And he writes, therefore, that Yom Kippur always used to be a private experience, that you would be in your own home doing your own thing, and everybody would be Masig, Ruach HaKodesh, and Nevuah in their own way. At home, that was the experience of Yom Kippur, and then the Kohen Gadol would be Lifnei V'Lifnim on behalf of Klal Yisrael, but everybody would be doing the same thing internally, right? Everybody would be retreating to their own Lifnei V'Lifnim inside of their homes and inside of themselves and inside of their shuls and schools and communities, and every Shevet would be doing the same thing. It was not one of the opportunities for Aliyah L'Regel. That wasn't it. It was a journey inwards, more than it was a coalescing together. All of that changes in the Bayesheni when the only experience that is left of Ruach HaKodesh is that experience of Kodesh HaKodashim. But the experience of Kodesh HaKodashim was always available, even to the relatively uninitiated during the Shalosh Regalim. And he says that he puts two pieces of Gemara together in Yerushalmi in Sukkah, that Yonah was one of the Olei Regel. Yonah was up in the Beis HaMikdash for Sukkot. And when they opened up the Aron Kodesh, they opened up the Paroches, you could see all the way in from the Azara straight through to the Ben Kruvim. And Yonah was standing in the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash, and he looked all the way through into the Kodesh HaKodashim, and he became a Navi. He got his nevuah then and there in the Beis HaMikdash. That is when Yonah ben Amitai became the Navi, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, by the way, Yonah, I'd like you to go to Nineveh. That's why he runs, because he was not initiated. He didn't feel that he was ready for this. He was totally overwhelmed. All of a sudden, he became a Navi. He probably was from the school of Nevi'im, but he had never, ever before received any official nevuah. He might have been trying for a long time to achieve nevuah, but this was the very first time. He wasn't expecting it. He was just a fiyantif. He wasn't expecting to become a Navi at that point in time, and that's why he runs.
Then many who were there say the same thing and don't become.
Right. It's not necessarily that you would.
Been there before, but something.
Right. Something happens to him there when he peers all the way through, and we're going to talk about what that is to a certain extent. What is the experience of Kodesh HaKodashim? What is that experience? What happens in the Kodesh HaKodashim?
Halachically, there's no issue to see it.
No.
It's just to be there.
Right. You can peer all the way in, and they would open that up. Now we have a minhag today that is reminiscent of that, and that is certainly in Shul's minhag Ashkenaz. We open up the Aron Kodesh at the Shalosh Regalim, and we say the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim. Hashem Hashem Karacham V'Chanan. That is, it would seem to be in Zecher to what was done on the Shalosh Regalim, that they would open up the Aron Kodesh, and everybody would see all the way through to the most elevated, lofty, and private relationship between Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is indicated by the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim. Right, those Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim are the relationship that Hashem has with us beyond sin, in the place that, like, beyond any kind of, or more internal than any sin or any mishap or any mistake or any catastrophe or calamity could penetrate. That place of the Yud Gimel Sharachamim, that is the kernel of the relationship between him and the Jewish people, that is impossible to adulterate. And we call upon that, of course, during the Yom Noraim, especially Yom Kippur, when the Kohen Gadol goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim to invoke the Yud Gimel Sarachamim. But we do this every year, three times a year. Whenever we take out the Sefer Torah and the Shalosh Regalim, we open up the Aron Kodesh, and we say the Yud Gimel Sarachamim, because that was the experience that we once upon a time had in the Beis Hamikdash. No, the Yud Gimel Sarachamim is not something that is said by the Kohen Gadol. It is something, to a certain extent, that is experienced. Right? We experience those Yud Gimel Sarachamim on Yom Kippur, meaning that we go to the place of the Yud Gimel Sarachamim. We enter into that space. Now, what is that space? What is that space? It's worth noting that Yud Gimel is the gematria of the word Ech. And that's important within this context, which again is a remez. And while remez is not an independent limud, at least the Masorah that I have in Ramazim is that it's not an independent limud, it is merames to something that is far deeper. And that's what we're going to speak about now. Says the Ramchal, the Akdama to Mishkanei Elyon. When the originator wanted to create this world, he contained all of that will into 10 great lights. 10 branches that branch off from a great tree. Until it is impossible that there is anything outside of that Merkavah Ha'elyona. When we learn the Hagdama of the Sod Yesharim, so the Sod Yesharim's Hagdama to the Beis Yaakov, so the Sod Yesharim points out that when we speak about Merkavah, what we mean is Hashem's chariot, but also the Harkavah, the grafting of, the connecting of all parts of creation. I think that is the context that the Ramchal is explaining here. That there is nothing that is outside of the Merkavah Ha'elyona. Everything is connected above. Everything has its place within the system of creation. V'hama'or ha'acharon shebahem, the final light, the final experience of the will of Hashem, shebahem hu nikra shechina, that is called shechina, is Hashem's presence in reality as we know it. V'sham nisharshu kol hanimtzaim v'havayd. In that place called Shechina is the root of all existence, meaning that there is a trunk of the tree, there's many branches to it, and then there is a base that is called Shechina. Kimilvad hasherish asher lahem bishar ha'ma'aris, yesh lahem sherish zeh b'shechina. Because aside from all of the independent parts of the will of Hashem in creation, there is a unifying connection point called Shechina. And we're going to explain what this means. Liyosa nikra b'mashal eim habanim. The Shechina is what's referred to by the pasuk eim habanim, the mother of the children. What we say in eim habanim smecha, but the mother of the children is happy. That is, all of these expressions of the will of Hashem that exist in this world come from a place that is unified called Shechina. Va'akol yotzi mitachas yadeha, and everything comes from this world called Shechina. Lachein ba nisharshu kulam, therefore that is the root of all creation as we know it. V'tzarich sheteda ki yesh makom echad miyuchad v'noidala sheba nichlalim kol hashorashim ha'ela. You should know that there is a place in which all of the expressions of creation are contained, meaning that that root of all creation has a name, has a place, has a manifestation in space and time. Visham yesh hasherish lekol hadvarim, and there is the root of all things. Litzluyim ba ulitzluyim b'shar ha'ma'aris ke'echad. All of creation, everything, all of the expressions of the will of Hashem, all tied together in this one space. Ki boy nisharshim ha'aretz umloi'ah ha'shamayim u'shmei ha'shamayim v'chol tzivsehem ish loy neder. And in their place, all things are unified. The root of all things connect, plug in to this one mainframe, if you will, right? Meaning everything in the whole world, everything, is connected to something, right? All expressions of the will of Hashem, for everything in the world to exist, like the Balatanya explains in Shari Yechud Ve'emunah, that everything is a constant expression of the will of Hashem. All of that connects to one point. When all of these roots of all of existence are all connected together into one space, one place, be'emtza yireh sham k'moi even achas. It would appear as if there is one stone there. Va'even hazos yikara ma'od, and this stone is very precious. Kulo mikol yofi v'chemda. It contains all beauty and all desire. Vehi hanikres even shisia. This is the foundation stone. Now, what the Ramchal is going to explain to us is that while it's true that there is an Even Shisia in the Beis Hamikdash, what he's describing here is, first and foremost, theoretical. It is a construct of reality. That all reality is, in theory, expressions of the will of Hashem that coalesce into a point.
He's saying knowledge is true in physical reality and literally.
So that abstract idea of a unified, of a place and space of unification has expression in the physical world as well. But it's in theory first. Right? It's
Fundamentally the same. I don't know.
so he's gonna
We don't see that.
yes, he's gonna explain that. He says, V'chein ha'isa even hazais ba'olam hazeh. And so too, this stone is in this world, meaning, and so too. It's not, and this stone is, meaning this thing that I've just described is in this world. No, it also finds expression in this world. Right? Lamata b'makom kodesh kadashim. Meaning, the expression of the unification of all things, which is a concept, which is an abstract idea, finds physical expression in this world, in the place called Kodesh HaKodashim, Ka'asher Evair Eid. Now, this is important to understand, because we've spoken about this a number of times before, is that everything exists both in theory and in reality, right? You have something that is abstract that finds expression in the physical world, right? A table is something physical, but it's also an abstract concept, right? When you make a table, you are making an instance of that thing called table, right? That broad definition of philosophical table. Even Shasiya is likewise. It is a massive philosophical, theoretical, theological construct that finds expression in this world, right? The concept of father and son, for example. Father and son are biological constructs, they are philosophical constructs, they are emotional constructs. They could also be a father and a son, right? That could coexist. And the mashal that the Ramchal gives us is Eim Habanim, the mother of all children, right? From there comes all of creation. So the Even Shasiya is that mashal in physical reality. He says, and from there spread out all things to all parts of existence. Mesilos, pathways, shvilin, also pathways, right? Roads, to all things. Now, this is important. From the point of origination, there are many, many points. But they start with big roads. There are big roads major branches that come out of this trunk, that come out of this central point. These are all of the major constructs of the parts of creation to all of its varieties. Each one understands its way. Aruchas tamid ha-nitna lahem me'es hamelach. And from there comes their constant stream of sustenance. Meaning through that pathway is how they are able to live. Now, what's fascinating, if you read this from Chal, and then you see, for example, like a tree of evolutionary biology. It's mamish this, right? That there are major trunks, right? I mean, there's a central trunk, and then it branches out into big sections, and then each one with smaller sections. And that's from a historical viewpoint. Ad kedei kach that Rav Kook wrote when Darwinism was becoming popular in the late 1800s. So Rav Kook wrote at that point in time, yeah, and like, okay, so science has discovered what the Ramchal was describing 200 years earlier, that the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world was with major channels and smaller offshoots of that. And that's not just the way that it was, it's also the way that it is. Meaning, the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides spiritual and physical sustenance for all creation is through these channels, these pathways that have been established since the Bris Olam. It says, there's also tiny little offshoots that come off for each of these things. There's an infinite amount of these offshoots, tiny offshoots that are just constantly propagating and continuing. Right? There's new species and there's new pots and there's new everything and this is true in terms of biology. This is also true in terms of astrophysics. There's billions of stars that are being born and being destroyed, and all these little pathways that are right. It's part of this, right? It is the branching off of this tree. So he says, and they are all connected from their greatest to their smallest. Each one has its own path. And all of these things, they all connect to this one central point. And when they are all connected to this one central location, from there HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at them. And from that point that all things are connected, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can look at all of them at the same time. At the point of connection, at the point of origin of all of the Bria, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at all existence, all space, all place, all time, all creation simultaneously. And this secret is expressed in the pasuk. HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates them all together. He unites the hearts of all of them in formation, and therefore understands all of it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created everything plugged in, unified together, and therefore understands all of it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is standing at the center of creation with regards to understanding everything. Obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Memale Kol Almim, Soviet Kol Almim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. What the Ramchal is explaining to us is how the Seder Habriya exists. He says, Ki zois ha'evan b'leiv ha'olam hi omedes. This stone stands at the heart of the world. V'sham heim kulam yachad mischabrim v'ne'esavim v'nizkar b'skira achas me'es hamelech, and in that place they are all connected, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at them all together. In this space, in this place, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees everything simultaneously. B'makim hazeh, in this place, asher zacharti lecha, that I've explained, nimtza derech echad gadol. There is one way, there is one road that is coming from this place. Saviv le'even saviv, that surrounds stone. V'zeh haderech hu k'may eretz rachavas yadayim me'od. It is a great expansive place, meaning there is a center, and then there is an expansive plain surrounding it. One very, very, very large road. One very large path that surrounds this, that comes from it and surrounds it, of which the stone is in the middle of. Uva arim gedolos, and in this expansive plain there are many cities. Uvitzuris, and strong. Loi niru kahina b'roi v'yafyam v'hadram. Nobody has seen anything as wondrous and as numerous and as beautiful. V'chol zeh haderech me'or atzmusay v'ziv yafav v'hadarai. All of this is from the beauty, from the grandeur and the greatness shel zeh ha'ma'or asher ani medaber lecha yatsa, that comes from this great light that I've described to you. And he's going to explain further. He says, "Va'al kein haya hamakam kodesh ma'od," and therefore this place is incredibly transcendent. V'ha'adama admas kodeshu, and the space, the land, the ground of this great expansive area is incredibly transcendent. Mimena yotza lemata haaretz hanikres Eretz Yisrael, that is expressed in our world as Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Asher Hashem Deiresh Osa, the land that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is desirous of. There should be a resh there. Get in touch with the publisher and let them know. Right? Eretz Asher Hashem Deiresh Osa. What the Ramchal is effectively explained here is that, in theory, all things plug in to the Evan Shasiyah, one point of unification. And surrounding that, meaning the major offshoot of, or the major offshoots of the Evan Shasiyah, are an enormous expansive plain that is filled with multitudes of beautiful, incredible places, meaning in theory, in the abstract of it, incredible ideas, philosophies, ideologies, all of which are direct expressions from this point of unification, in which the unification is still visible. You can still see how everything ties in from those places. Meaning, lemashal, if you have a center in the middle of a great expansive circular plane, and everything would be, a school of this and a philosophy of that and an organization of that, and they all are facing the center to the exact same point, right? Focused on that middle point, understanding that nothing is greater or less than, or more important or less important. All of them are different ways of viewing that center, but all viewing the center and all seeing each other viewing that center. That is the ideal called Eretz Yisrael. And from that ideal called Eretz Yisrael, there are 12 Shvatim, each of which is their own identity within that world, that all coalesce into a middle point called Hashem Echad. And that is experienced physically by the expression of Yerushalayim, in which there is a Beit HaMikdash, and in which there is a Heichal, and in which there is a Kodesh HaKadoshim.
Are each of those symbols for that plane?
Yes, meaning with concentric circles, expanding outwards. But Eretz Yisrael is that place where everything is operating very clearly in accordance with that focus in the middle.
There's a real non-linearity in Chutzlars, something
Right.
very different.
What is Chutz La'aretz? So he says, V'saviv la'aretz hazos nimtza od drachim rabim. Outside of this, there are many, many, many other roads. Holchim miktzeh ha'olam v'akatzeh, from one end of the world to the other. Ele minim ve'ele masmi'ilim, those that are to the right and those that are to the left. There are those that go in one direction, those that go in the other direction, and they are all on either side of this conceptual Eretz Yisrael. And these drachim are able to create many, many, many other lands, many places, many other states, nations. To place them under the stewardship of many powerful forces. And thus you should know ki kol haratzis haya lahem lios taharis v'lo tmeas. The original design of creation is that the entirety of the Bria was going to be tahar, not tameh. That all of these expansive outposts from that grand idea, all of those expansive outposts should be tahar. Further away, but certainly not impure, certainly not inappropriate. And also the sarim, the philosophical constructs that govern them, or the physiological or geological constructs, or with regards to mazalos that govern those things, all of them are tahar. All of them are expressions of the Ratzon of Hashem, meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can be found even in the furthest outpost of, the Saturn's orbit, right?
Could have been, not can be.
Still can be.
Something.
V'kasher hishchitu b'nei adam es darkam, when people messed up, when we messed up, balbalu hadvarim v'niskalkal ha'olam. Everything got mixed up and everything got messed up. V'nimshechu asarim letzad hatuma. And those sarim, those philosophical, theological, geological, astrological constructs were schlepped into the world of Tumah, meaning they became expressions of the desire to not engage with Hashem. What we described last week as the alternative. Meaning, this thing, this far-flung outpost of the Bria is not visible from the source to me standing there, and the source is not visible to me, and therefore I can ignore it. And I can just engage with this place that I'm in, this space that I'm in, and the rules that govern this place. V'nishar ha'aratzos tmeas, and therefore other places became tameh. When the Medrash Rabbah tells us that the Mauritian was able to see Misofa Olim Va'ad Sofa, that's what we're talking about. Meaning that all places were all connected, could all be visible from the central location. Right? Everything was connected. It says, Ki hatuma nischazka b'roiv madregaseha. Tumah becomes strengthened with the multitude of layers. Meaning the more steps that you have removed, the further the removed something becomes, the more tameh it is. So once something is disconnected, every further disconnect, every bastardization, every alteration to it takes it further away. V'chel kol hahem es ha'aretz Yisrael, and all of these lands become separated, divided out. Va'alkein nitmeu, and therefore they became tamei. They became disconnected. Ach ba'amdam b'tikunam, when they will be restored. V'chein behis kanam la'asid lavai, when they were in their state of tikkun, and when they will be re-mitukan in the future, lo yimeas kim taras. Then Boca Raton, Florida is not going to be Tameh any longer. Like Kedushas Haaretz HaTova, Asher Nasan Hashem La'ama Yisrael Olam. It won't have the same transcendence. It won't have the same Kedusha as Eretz Yisrael, but it won't be Tameh. And in order to understand this, we need to understand the difference between Kachim and Taras, which you ask people on the street, what's the difference between Kachim and Taras? Hard to give definitions, but they are two totally separate Sedarim in Mishnayos, right? Kachim is one Seder of Mishnayos, and Taras is another Seder of Mishnayos, right? Pashas is that when it comes to the world of Tum and Tahara, Tahara means neutral. Tahara meaning Pshuta Kamashma, pure. It is unadulterated. It's not messed up. In order to be Kadosh, in order to be transcendent, you need to be not messed up. Right? That's the base level. It is why we see this in Chazal and Midrashim. The Jewish people sunk to the 49th level of Tumah. There are not 49 levels of Tahara. There's Memta Shari Bina, right? Worlds of understanding. There are multitudes of worlds of Kedusha. Like we see the Mishnah says that there are Asara Kedushos, but there's not Asara Taharos, right? Either it's Tahar or it's not. Right. The mashal that the Shla gives is the whole world used to be Tahar. This is the Shla at the beginning of Vayikra. The whole world used to be Tahar. And then it became, so to speak, like covered in sludge. If you pour sludge over the world, so that's called Tumah. Now, there's certain places that were higher up, so the sludge is thinner there, right? So like Eretz Yisrael is more mesugal for Tahara, because it's higher up. So it's also more Kaddish, because it's more transcendent, meaning in terms of that mashal. But Boka will be Tahar. It won't be Kodesh, but it'll be Tahar. I want to be Kodesh because it's still far away. Still far away. Now, Chazal also tell us that Eretz Yisrael is going to expand. Eretz Yisrael is going to expand, and Yerushalayim is going to expand, and the Beis Hamikdash is going to expand, meaning that there is the possibility of increasing Tahara, increasing Kedusha in a place that is Tahar. And we see this. We see this in Halacha very often, that you can make something Kodesh. Right? You can be Makdish something. We said in benching, we refer to this great dream when we refer to Eretz Yisrael as a Eretz Rechava. Rechava means expansive. So I would always joke that maybe this was understood by Jews in Bavel when they looked at the map. So you're looking at the map east-west, right? So you look at Eretz Yisrael, tiny sliver of land, but if you're looking at it from Bavel, so then it looks, wide on the map. But that's tongue-in-cheek, right? Eretz Yisrael is tiny. What do you mean that Eretz Yisrael is rechava, that it's what? No, it is. It is expansive, and it is going to further expand. Eretz Yisrael, in theory, contains all of the major philosophies of the world, of the universe. Everything is contained within the great, beautiful cities, the citadels of the 12 Shvatim, which obviously correlates to the 12 Mazalos. And from then are all of the Sorim of all of the Umos. All of that is contained within Eretz Yisrael. he says, "V'havei me'od," understand this a lot, which I obviously don't. He says, "Kisoidus gedolim ve'atzumim, mushrashim b'shosha hachachma harbe." Because many secrets, immense secrets of the roots of all wisdom, I'm revealing to you here. What you say? Right. It's also a thing because he was 22 when he wrote this. But no. Let's make us feel good about ourselves. Al-Kain, tisgaber bebinascha, strengthen your understanding. Strengthen yourself and you'll begin to understand a little bit, right? Just understand a little. It says, understand the greatness of Hashem, even one drop in a massive ocean. If you understand this, even what I've explained to you so far, you already understand a tremendous amount. Just by understanding this construct that I've presented to you. Now listen carefully, and I'm going to tell you a big secret. Big secret, he says. He says, "Kasher nichlal ha'ma'or ha'acharon hazeh b'chol oresav b'chol tikun noisav." When this great light, this great expression of the will of Hashem to create reality, this final light called Shechina that creates the physical manifestation of our world. B'chol tikunav ve'amad al me'inai karaui nimtza loy b'seif makam echad neira ma'od hu makam hachemda agdola u makam ha'ahava ha'shalom. When everything is as it is supposed to be, it is possible to perceive the unification of all things in this world. It's possible to perceive it in a place, in a space, a makam of tremendous love and peace. V'hamakam tzofen v'ganus lemelech levado levoy boy, v'ish lo yovoy boy zulasei. And that place is the place of the king himself. No one else is allowed in. There is a place that all of that becomes manifest in physical reality when everything is working out perfectly. And in this place, all of the great lights of all of this wonder are contained. And all of its beauty and all its completion. And there is all of the wonder and beauty. When the king is in residence, mi yuchal lemalel reiv piv v'tuvai ki ein aruch elav bechol ga'oinai u'kedushasai. It's impossible to describe. It's impossible to relate to. That place is called Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, over to the next page, which we're not going to do now. What the Ramchal explains is that surrounding the Kodesh HaKadoshim in concentric circles is the Kodesh and the Azara and the Mikdash. And in those places were expressions of the entirety of Yerushalayim, the entirety of Eretz Yisrael, and the entirety of the world. Because all of those main pathways extend out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Which means that there are kelim and directions within the Mikdash that are places from which the entirety of the world operates. Which is why when Chazal explained that the Kohen would do Zrikas Hadam on one side of the Mizbech and then walk around to do an avodah on the other side of the Mizbech, right? It would sprinkle on this corner and then that corner and that. Those were all avodas of how Hashem relates to the world. And when we see that there are machloksim in Tanoim of which way the avodah was done, what that means is that there is a machlokis in Tanoim of what is the best way for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to relate to the entirety of the Bria. And there are different philosophies of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu should relate to the Bria. And all of them found expression. in where the Mizbeach was, and where a Kohen would walk from and walk to, and the fact that the directions of Tzofan, Dorim, Mizrach, and Mariv had different kelim, means that those are places that HaKadosh Baruch Hu relates to the world in different ways, in different directions. We spoke about this a little bit on Leil Shavuos, that Ramesh David Valley, the Talmud of the Ramchal, explains that Ashkenazim became Ashkenazim because they went to northern lands. So the avoda of Ashkenazim became through Midas Hagura. And Sfardim that went to Middle Eastern and more southern lands became Midas HaChesed, because that is the place in the world that is expressed as Midas HaChesed through the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the universe. And therefore, what resonated with the people that went there, or the people went there because it resonated within them, those particular kinds of avoda. And all of this finds coalescence and connection in Eretz Yisrael, and from Eretz Yisrael to Yerushalayim. And that's what the pasuk says: Hamakom asher yivchar Hashem, the place which Hashem will choose, that point of coalescence of all things, which the Rambam writes in Hilchos Beis Bechira, is Mechuva Yosef, was already from Sheish Bereshis. The Makom HaMikdash was always supposed to be there. There's the Evan Shasiyah and the Makom HaMizbeach, and those two things are two center points of reality that are all totally different worlds. What the Ramchal is explaining to us is that this is all in the abstract before it becomes practical. The practical world is a physical manifestation of the grand philosophy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for the universe. And once we understand this, we can understand a little bit of what Kibush Eretz Yisrael is. Because effectively, in this place that all things are supposed to unify and are supposed to become one and are supposed to coalesce into one understanding where you can perceive the unity of all creation. If there's somebody there that's cutting the wires of that central mainframe, so that is a problem. That's not just a problem for Klal Yisrael having, a place to plant their, their vineyards and their orchards. It becomes a pagam in the bria. All of creation is now not talking to each other. There's a separation between Rotz Hashem, for this multiplicity of beauty and creation to all connect to one central understanding. And that severing of all of those points, called Avodah Zarah, being oved something that is zar, called Tuma, disconnecting from the source. All of that needs to be eradicated. All of that needs to be pruned, needs to be gotten rid of. And that could either be through the transformation of those people into people that, we should reconnect here. We should join Klal Yisrael, or through the destruction of those forces. What's important to understand here is that color and multiplicity and contrast and beauty are all part of the picture. Meaning, Klal Yisrael is never supposed to be monolithic. The mashal that the Torah gives to it, to this understanding in practice, is each shevet having their degel with their own colors. That Rashi points out in the beginning of Bamidbar, those colors were the colors of the stones on the Choshen Mishpat. I mean, the colors of Yehuda was the color, their flag was the same color as the stone on the Choshen of the Kohen Gadol, because that was the microcosm to macrocosm. And the Ramchal is saying that even further, that there are places in the world that are represented through that philosophy of the stone and the color and the shevet and the avoda of Shevet Yehuda. All of that exists from, like, if you have the pie, the slice of pie, so in the center, everything is connected, but it branches out further and further and further. But it's all within the same slice. But if there's somebody right at the beginning that said, no, we're going to do it different. We're going to have a different kind of thing that's going on there. Well, that's a tremendous, effectively what you've done is you've cut the entire slice out of the pie. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So the milchama that is against the Shiva Amimim is a milchama against cutting off all of reality from its source. Because we need to reconnect to it. That's the job of Klal Yisrael, is to allow for everybody to have full expression of their personality and the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created them within the world of Avodas Hashem, not outside of it. That Ata Echad v'Shimcha Echad Mika Amcha Yishal Goy Echad Ba'aretz. In Eretz Yisrael now becomes that place of coalescence. Of course, there's a lot more to understand. The rest of the Ramchal's Mishkanei Elyon is explaining how each part of the Mikdash relates to different avodos and different pieces of Ratzon Hashem. But this should suffice for now to understand what the conversations are and the milchamas are between Yehoshua and the nations of Eretz Yisrael. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will go back to next week. Have a wonderful evening.